Hello, my name is Timothy Steele, and I want to introduce to you guys a JavaScript framework called Vue.js. Vue JavaScript is a reactive JavaScript framework that powers the client-side software experience. JavaScript is powering a lot of websites today, and to deliver this client-side software experience, JavaScript needs to be organized, and Vue.js is one way of organizing JavaScript in a very modular way. There are other frameworks like Angular or React. I would like to say that Vue.js has some advantages to consider. For one, it is incrementally adoptable, meaning that you can plug Vue.js into a single part of a web page. You can see here in this diagram, you can have other HTML and JavaScript files, other frameworks involved in a project, and still incorporate Vue JavaScript in just a portion of the project. Yet if you want to scale an application that starts with Vue.js, it has core libraries like Vuex and VueRouter that can enable you to scale it if need be. Similar to React.js or other frameworks, it is a reactive framework, meaning that as data changes, that is reflected immediately on the website. It's also very useful for creating reusable components. You can see in this diagram here different parts of the web page that each have their own HTML, site structure, CSS styling, and JavaScript functionality divided into each component. This makes it a very intuitive and modular approach. If a designer wants to change something in a component, he knows exactly where to find it. If a programmer wants to change something in the programming for a certain component, he knows exactly where to find it. There's no guessing. There's no guessing. It is also a very learnable framework. If you understand JavaScript, if you've used other frameworks, then this is something that you can learn. Let me share with you guys how to set up a new project with Vue.js. The Vue platform has a build system or a few options for a build system you can use, and we're going to use Webpack. And this framework is something that we can use from the Vue interface command line. I say Vue init Webpack simple -simple, then the name of the project. I'm going to give it a project name and description by default. From here, I can go into the project folder. I run the command npm install, which will install all of the Node Product Manager dependencies for the project. This will take just a minute. So the project by default will install several of these Node project modules. These packages are useful for all kinds of different things. I was able to use several for my project. They're helpful in adding new features. So the project is installed. We've got the dependencies for Node Product Manager, and we've got a project. So let's open it. I'm going to add a folder to the workspace. This is Visual Studio Code. It's been really helpful to work with. I'm going to add this demo folder to my workspace. And the file that we're going to be focused on is this app.vue. I mentioned about being able to use components in a Vue.js project. This is a single file that has everything necessary for a component. It has the HTML, it has the CSS, it has the JavaScript. So this template section right here contains the HTML, The script contains the JavaScript. I'll get to that in a minute. And the styling for CSS. So what if I want to have an application that has a date input? How would I find a module that could allow me to pick the date? I'm going to search for a Node Project Manager, Vue.js date picker. So here's one that works with Vue.js. As I got started on my project, I did not see a lot of instructions on how to include a module in a Vue.js project, but these instructions are pretty helpful. So I'm going to install this package in this folder. This -- save is relevant to the Webpack build system we're using. Perfect, so we've installed that. Now let's add this import statement into the script section. Now this goes above the export. This export contains data and methods, and we want to place the import statement before any of that. Then we also need to register this date picker as a component. This export section allows us to dictate to the project what the data and methods are, and part of that is the components for the project, as mentioned in the beginning of the video. So we have a date picker component, and then finally we can add this date picker element into the template, into the HTML. So I'm going to get rid of all this default, and we are just going to have a date picker. Now to run this project, let's go back to the folder. Let's say npm run dev. What? A blank web page? Okay, this is not the most clearly illustrated demo, but here you can see the input for the date. If I select it, I can see the date. Now, how do I use that information? We have this really neat attribute called v-model that allows us to directly inject the input into the data state of the application. So here I'm going to reference a variable in the data section of the script. I have not added that variable yet, but we will add it. Let's call this date input. In this data section, we can create that variable. It's going to represent a date object, so I will write new date. From here, we can immediately use the date input and display it to the page. We do that with double curly braces. This is a feature that Vue has that's really awesome. You can access data from the application in the HTML using a variable with these curly braces. That's pretty sweet. So we can just say date input here. Now, here we go. We select December 19th, the last day of class, and we see as soon as I pick that day, the date is then displayed on the web page. So that is just a little bit about how JavaScript works, how the project is organized, and I hope it also was helpful to see an example of how to incorporate a Node Package Manager module in a project. Vue has a lot of benefits and has been a lot of fun to work with.